What if a child could speak not one, not two, but 9 languages flawlessly? What if his words could bend reality and even terrify the most powerful people in the world? Tonight you will meet a black waitress's son, a child who made an Arab billionaire CEO laugh and then freeze in shock. A secret so dangerous, so unimaginable, it will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about the world. Stay with us, because by the end of this story, you will understand why some voices should never be ignored. Watch closely, listen carefully, and prepare to be stunned. The restaurant hummed with quiet conversations. Crystal chandeliers cast fractured light across marble floors. Faint aroma of saffron and roasted coffee filled the air. She moved between tables, balancing plates with practiced grace. Her son, small and curious, sat at a corner table, eyes fixed on a man at the far end. The man was unmistakable. Sleek suit, gold cufflinks, the aura of someone used to power, the Arab billionaire CEO, a name whispered in headlines and boardrooms. Looked down at his phone. Her son stood suddenly, tiny chest swelling with pride. "I speak 9 languages," he said, voice clear and unwavering. The room seemed to still. Forks paused mid-air. Glasses clinked softly. The CEO laughed. A rich, rolling sound, not unkind but full of disbelief. "9?" he asked, leaning back, eyes sparkling with amusement. "Yes," the boy replied, eyes locking on his, unwavering. The laughter faded. Something shifted in the billionaire's gaze. It sharpened. The air thickened, like the calm before a storm. A waiter dropped a tray somewhere in the back. The son repeated, slower this time, savoring each word. "I speak 9 languages." The CEO stood abruptly, chair scraping against the polished floor. His laughter disappeared entirely. He took a step toward the boy. The restaurant seemed smaller, walls closing in, every whisper, every clink, every breath felt amplified. The boy did not flinch. He smiled. The CEO stopped inches away, studying him, as if trying to measure a puzzle he could not solve. Then the man's hand twitched toward his pocket. The entire room held its breath. And then, the impossible happened. The CEO spoke in the boy's 3rd language, perfectly. The boy blinked. Her stomach dropped. A cold sweat prickled her spine. The billionaire leaned closer, voice low, yet it carried over the quiet. "You do not know what you are saying," he said. The boy smiled wider. Her heart pounded. The lights seemed to flicker, shadows stretching unnaturally across the floor. The CEO stepped back, eyes wide, a hint of fear flashing in them. "What? How do you know that word?" he whispered, almost to himself. The boy's smile did not waver. And then, the mother noticed it. The man's reflection in the polished silver tray trembled. It was not just his shadow. Something else moved with it. Something alive. Her hands shook. The boy tilted his head. "Do you wish to continue?" he asked innocently, yet every word carried weight. The CEO's face paled. The restaurant felt impossibly still. And then came the sound, a soft whisper, repeating the boy's words in 9 languages. All at once, the mother's pulse raced. No one else seemed to hear it. Only her, only the boy. The billionaire stepped back, stumbling, eyes darting around the emptying room, and the last thing she saw before he fled was a small, knowing smile on her son's face. The restaurant fell silent after he vanished. Her son sat still, as if nothing had happened, but the shadows on the walls seemed to shiver. She bent down, whispering, "Are you okay?" He nodded slowly, eyes glinting strangely in the dim light. "I am fine, Mother," he said, but his voice, it carried a weight she had never heard before. A soft tapping echoed from the ceiling, irregular and deliberate. The chandeliers swayed. Though no wind stirred, her stomach churned. She felt a cold hand of dread crawl up her spine. The whispers returned, not just in the languages he spoke, all 9 of them, plus one she did not recognize. It seemed to wrap around her. The phone vibrated violently in the billionaire's hand. The screen glowed with symbols, shifting and twisting, impossible to read. His breath caught the words. They were moving, forming sentences, speaking directly to him. Voice echoed through the device, soft, clear, terrifyingly. Familiar, you laughed at a child. He dropped the phone. It slid across the floor. But the screen never went dark. The voice continued. You ignored what you could not see. Now you must listen. Across the city, screens flickered in every window, every streetlight pulsed in time with the whispering. The world had begun to answer. Back at the restaurant, she looked at her son. His eyes glowed faintly gold. The shadows were gone, for now. But something in the air hummed, waiting. Mother, he said softly, they know we exist, and they are curious. She swallowed hard. Outside, the wind howled, though no clouds moved. And in that howl, she heard voices, voices speaking in languages she did not know. And some she did. Her son tilted his head, listening. A faint smile appeared. They are coming to learn. But only I decide what they hear. The city seemed to hold its breath. And somewhere in the billionaire's distant office, a shadow moved behind him, watching, waiting. And for the first time, he realized the boy was not just a child. He was a storm speaking 9, no 10 languages. And the world had already begun to bend to his words. The last thing she felt was a chill crawling over her skin. The last thing she heard was her son whispering a single word, perfectly clear in every language in the room. A word that promised. Everything was about to change. The word hung in the air. It reverberated off the walls, vibrating through her bones. Outside, the city pulsed as if alive, lights flickering in unnatural rhythm. Her son stepped closer, eyes glowing brighter, almost blinding. Mother, he said softly, they listen. They always listen. She tried to speak, but no sound came. The shadows returned, creeping along the floor, curling around the legs of the furniture, not quite solid, not quite empty. They whispered, mimicking the languages her son had spoken, and some that no human had ever heard. The whispers were hungry, searching, learning. Her son extended a hand. The shadows recoiled as if burned. They will obey me, he said, calmly. A chill ran down her spine. She realized he was no longer just a child. He was something else entirely, something ancient, something that had waited, hidden through centuries, listening to the world's languages, absorbing them. The air thickened, time seemed to stretch. A heartbeat sounded, impossibly loud, echoing in her chest. The shadows trembled, and then for a moment froze completely. A figure emerged from them, tall, faceless. Breathing slowly, it bowed slightly to the boy. He nodded. The figure vanished. And then, the room went utterly silent. The city outside fell into a tense, unnatural quiet. She felt it in her bones. The world had shifted, and the storm that was her son, had begun. He whispered again, barely audible. A single word, one that carried power beyond comprehension, and the city, the world, waited for his next command. The single word escaped his lips. It was soft, almost melodic, but it carried weight that made the walls tremble. The shadows erupted, stretching and writhing like living ink. The air shimmered, heavy with electricity. Her heart pounded so loud she thought it would burst. The city outside seemed to pause. Traffic halted, mid-motion. Streetlights flickered, windows rattled as if trembling in fear. A cold wind swept through the restaurant. Though no doors were open, her son's eyes glowed brighter, golden light spilling from them, touching every corner of the room. The whispers returned, louder now, screaming in every language she had ever heard, and ones she could not comprehend. The walls themselves seemed to speak, repeating the word he had said. The billionaire, far away, fell to his knees, staring at his phone. It displayed the same word, scrolling endlessly across the screen. He tried to move, to speak, to run, but he could not. The word had reached him. Her son smiled faintly, almost tenderly, as if comforting a frightened animal. Then he turned to her. "Mother," he said, voice calm. "This is only the beginning." The shadows surged forward, twisting, almost alive, yet they obeyed him perfectly, forming shapes, doors, paths, realities. The air burned with power. The word listen lingered in the air, stretching, bending reality around her. The city outside no longer felt real. Every sound, every movement seemed slower, heavier, as if filtered through something unseen. Her son turned from the window, eyes glowing brighter than ever. "Mother," he said softly, "they are learning. And we are the teachers." She felt a chill crawl up her spine. The shadows stirred again, curling toward her like liquid smoke. Not hostile, not friendly, curious, hungry for knowledge. Her son raised a hand, and the shadows froze, but she saw movement beneath the surface. Something massive, something older than the world was watching, waiting, and it was listening. Her son whispered in a language she could not comprehend. The shadows quivered, the air hummed, and then a voice, deep, resonant, impossibly old, answered. It spoke in perfect harmony with her son's words, a single phrase that made her knees buckle. Finally. "Someone speaks." Her son smiled faintly. "Yes," he said, "and I will decide what they learn and what they become." The shadows surged forward, not to attack, not to harm, but to gather, to understand. The city, the world, seemed to bend in response. She realized with a sickening clarity that nothing would ever return to normal. Her son was no longer just a child. He was the axis around which the world now turned, and everything would have to answer to him. She swallowed hard, and in that instant, she knew one truth above all. The storm had come, the world had listened, and it would never stop. The city seemed still, but it was not. Every building, every street, every shadow whispered in response to him. Her son walked slowly through the restaurant, eyes glowing gold, hand brushing along the walls. The shadows clung to him, moving like living extensions of his will. She followed, heart pounding, unable to tear her eyes away. Outside, the world began to bend. Streetlights tilted unnaturally. Cars moved as if guided by invisible hands. Yet no one was inside. Screens flickered with words she did not understand, glowing with the same golden light as her son's eyes. Birds froze mid-flight, then resumed, their paths curving as if the air itself obeyed him. Her son turned toward her. "Mother," he said softly, "do you see it now?" She nodded, trembling. He smiled faintly, almost tenderly. "They are learning," he whispered, "and soon they will speak." A shadow detached itself from the corner of the room. It was enormous, taller than any human, with a shape that shifted constantly, and yet it bowed before him. Her son reached out a hand. The shadow obeyed instantly, moving closer, trembling with anticipation. He spoke in a language older than time itself. The shadows surrounding the room shivered, twisting into impossible shapes, flowing toward the boy like rivers of darkness. And then she heard it. The world itself seemed to answer, softly at first, then louder, a low hum vibrating in her chest, in her bones, in her mind. Her son turned to her, eyes blazing. "They are mine now," he said calmly, "and the world will listen." The air shimmered, the shadows flowed, and somewhere, far beyond the city, something ancient stirred. It had heard, it had always been waiting, and now it would come. The city no longer felt like a city. It was a pulse, a living thing, bending and trembling under her son's silent command. Screens lit across the world, flashing golden symbols, repeating the same word he had spoken. Listen. Airplanes halted mid-air. Ships swerved impossibly, as if invisible hands guided them. Animals froze, their eyes glinting unnaturally, as though they understood. Her son walked to the window. The world stretched endlessly beneath him, and it listened. Low vibration filled her chest. It was coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. She looked at him. "Mother," he said softly. "They are curious. They have waited long enough, and now they will speak." Outside, the shadows of cities began to ripple like water. Mountains trembled in the distance. The oceans swelled unnaturally. A deep, resonant voice answered her son, older than time, impossibly vast. It spoke in a language she could not understand, but she could feel it. It carried knowledge, memory, power. Her son smiled faintly, tilting his head. "They finally speak," he said, and the world shivered. The shadows surged, filling streets, skies, oceans, and skies again. Her son raised his hand, and the storm that had once been whispers, then shadows, then fear, now became the world itself. Every creature, every object, every breath of air bent to his will, and far beyond, something ancient, something that had slept for millennia. The shadows outside the restaurant stretched farther than the eye could see. Buildings bent slightly. Streets curved unnaturally, and the wind carried whispers in languages no human had ever spoken. Her son walked to the doorway, calm, each step leaving a faint golden glow on the ground. She followed, heart pounding, unable to tear her gaze away. The city itself seemed alive, responding to him. Streetlights tilted, cars stopped mid-motion, and even the birds hovered in the air, frozen, as if waiting for a command. He lifted his hand, and the world trembled. A low hum filled the streets, resonating with every heartbeat, every breath. People looked around, confused, unsettled. Though none could see what she did, her son's eyes glowed brighter, and with a quiet whisper in a language older than time, the shadows surged forward. They spread beyond the city, across the oceans, touching mountains, forests, and deserts. The hum became a chant, growing louder, speaking in uncountable voices, carrying his command across the planet. She realized with a cold shiver that the world itself now obeyed him. He turned to her, calm, eyes still glowing, a faint smile on his lips. "Mother," he said softly, "this is only the beginning. The world listens, and soon it will speak." The sky darkened unnaturally. The oceans heaved. Rivers reversed. Winds swirled with purpose, and far beyond the clouds, something ancient awoke. It had heard his voice, and it was curious. The shadows around them pulsed in unison with the world's heartbeat, and she knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone. Nothing, not a single thing, would ever be safe from him. The storm had begun, and it would never end. Far beyond the city, in the skies above continents she had never seen, the air shimmered unnaturally. Something vast and ancient stirred. It had listened. It had waited for a voice like his. Her son lifted his hand. The shadows around him surged, spreading across oceans, mountains, forests, reaching out like black rivers of living darkness. The ancient presence responded. A low, resonant hum that shook the planet echoed through the skies, through the oceans, through the earth itself. She could feel it in her bones. Her son spoke, softly, deliberately. Words older than time slipped from his lips, forming a language that twisted reality itself. The shadows obeyed instantly, bending to his will, colliding with the ancient presence in a wave of light and darkness. The world trembled. Skies cracked with golden fissures. Oceans swelled. Mountains groaned. Cities bent. The hum became a roar. The ancient presence spoke again, in a voice that was not a voice. "You command power you cannot yet comprehend." Her son tilted his head, smiling faintly. "Power is not for comprehension," he said. "It is for command." The shadows twisted into impossible shapes, swirling around the presence like molten ink. Time itself seemed to slow. Bending around them, she could see the world fracture, then reform, in rhythm with her son's voice. The ancient presence hesitated, then surged forward, massive and incomprehensible. Her son did not flinch. He raised his hand. And the shadows, the world, even the ancient force itself, froze. The hum stopped. The silence was absolute. Then he whispered one word, a word so ancient, so commanding that it echoed through every mind, every creature, every corner of existence. Obey! The world shuddered, and in that instant, she understood. He was no longer just a child. He was the axis of everything. The storm had become reality, and nothing, living or ancient, could resist him. The silence stretched, heavy and absolute, as if the world itself were holding its breath. Then, slowly, the shadows began to pulse, moving in perfect rhythm with her son's heartbeat. Buildings bent gracefully. Streets curved like ribbons. Oceans shimmered unnaturally under the golden light of the sky. Every living creature paused, listening. Every bird, every fish, every human, every animal, even the wind, responded to him. Her son walked through the streets, untouched by chaos, calm, eyes glowing gold. People stared, frozen mid-step, their hearts and minds inexplicably tuned to his presence. The ancient presence, vast and timeless, knelt in silence, acknowledging him, not defeated. Not angry, acknowledging. Her son's lips moved in a language older than stars, a word so precise it reshaped reality around him. Mountains shimmered, rivers sang, and the air itself carried whispers of obedience. She realized with a chill, the world was no longer their own. It belonged to him. The city pulsed with golden light. The universe itself seemed to shiver under his gaze. Galaxies twisted, stars pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat, and the dark void between them shimmered with golden light. Her son walked forward, calm, as if the infinite expanse of existence were merely a playground. Every particle, every atom, every pulse of energy responded to him. The shadows had left the world and now stretched across space, weaving bridges between stars, forming impossible structures that defied comprehension. She floated beside him, awed and terrified, unable to speak. He looked at her, eyes glowing like twin suns. "Mother," he said softly, voice carrying across light years, "everything you see, everything you cannot see, listens to me now." A presence stirred far beyond the edge of creation. It had existed before time itself. It had slept, patient, infinite. And now it had awakened. It moved closer, not violently but curiously, drawn to the voice that shaped reality. Her son lifted his hand, and the vast cosmic entity paused, bowing slightly, acknowledging him. He whispered words older than the universe itself. The stars answered. The void answered. The ancient presence trembled, and then obeyed. She watched, frozen, as her son's smile spread across his face. "It listens," he said softly. "It always listens." Time fractured, space twisted. The cosmos itself had become his instrument. And in that infinite silence, she realized the final truth. The storm had never been just on Earth. It had been inside him, and now it was everything. The last sound she heard, reverberating through galaxies, atoms, and light itself, was his voice whispering a single word. "Listen." The universe trembled and waited. The universe shivered, vast and infinite, as if holding its breath. Her son stood at the center of existence, calm, golden eyes piercing the darkness between stars. Every galaxy, every planet, every particle of matter responded to him. The shadows stretched across dimensions, weaving themselves through realities unseen, bending space and time to his will. She floated beside him, heart pounding, awed and terrified. The ancient presence stirred again, immense and incomprehensible, older than stars themselves. It spoke not in words, but in vibration, deep and resonant, echoing through the fabric of reality. You. Command what cannot be commanded, it said, voice folding into every corner of the universe. Her son tilted his head, smile faint, calm, terrifying. I do not command, he said softly. I speak, and the universe obeys. Stars trembled. Black holes pulsed like living hearts. Time bent, folding back on itself, creating endless loops and infinite possibilities. The shadows surged, connecting galaxies, forming bridges across dimensions, threading through existence itself. She felt the pull of infinity tug at her, the enormity of what he had become pressing against her very soul. Her son turned to her, eyes glimmering with something eternal. Mother, he whispered, voice soft but vast. Do you see now? This is only the beginning. The universe listens. The ancient presence bowed, acknowledging him, and the cosmos itself quivered in response. Then her son spoke a single word, resonating through every atom, every star, every corner of reality. Listen. And the universe, infinite and eternal, obeyed. Time froze. Space held its breath, and she realized, with a chill that pierced her bones, the storm was no longer a force. It was her son. It was the universe itself, and it would never stop. The last thing she felt was the pull of infinity, endless and alive, wrapped around a child's voice. The last thing she heard was the word echoing forever. The golden light slowly dimmed, leaving the world calm yet forever changed. Her son stood in the center, shadows curling gently around him, no longer wild, but patient and obedient. The wind whispered softly, carrying fragments of the languages he had mastered, now quiet, at peace. She stepped closer, hand brushing his, feeling the pulse of something vast yet familiar. Mother, he said softly, eyes glowing faintly gold. Everything listens now, but not all is chaos. Some things can rest. The city, the world, the universe itself seemed to exhale, folding back into a fragile calm. Even the ancient presence, patient and immense, receded into the distance, bowing silently before him. Her son smiled, small and human, yet touched with power no one could comprehend. You have nothing to fear, he whispered, voice gentle. For now, the storm has learned to wait. The shadows softened, folding around them.